Because if we're going to uh, leverage our economies to the level that we would like to take them to, this is a natural partner for us. So we're taking a decision in my tenure to ensure that in our industrialization we're going to bring on board the private sector. So everything that we have done, we have made sure that we bring the private sector in. South Africa has a very robust culture of business fora and all of those things, and also in various other countries that are in the SADC region.
Yes, ma'am.
We've made sure that there is, creative cohabitation with the private sector. But the details you'll find very useful and very interesting in the footage of the video.
Yes.
And I'd actually urge you to look at it because it's very instructive.
And what was their response like, ma'am, when you started encouraging building bonds with them?
Well, they're always extremely willing and supportive, because they themselves want investment. They themselves want to interact with countries outside of their own borders. They are wanting to enlarge their own capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So the interaction with the private sector has always been very good, and they've been very supportive.
Okay.
We've just come out of BRICS right now,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the agreements that we signed at BRICS as South Africa and South Africa outreach were trade agreements,
Okay.
from which they benefit immensely.
Mm-hmm.
We have just come from the last AU we had gone to. A number of other countries that had not signed the free trade agreement have now signed the free trade agreement. What we need now is the basis, the industrialization of Africa, so that we're able to trade with each other. And we are required to provide the necessary infrastructure so our goods can travel from one country to the other. The whole package includes
Mm-hmm.
the private sector, which is a business entity. This is what we're talking about. It includes foreign investment. It includes governments. And we think that we've got to a point now where we're able to synchronize what we do and get maximum benefit for our people, create more jobs, create more opportunities for economic growth, and etc.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're doing well in that area.
Okay. And ma'am, the last one, what's your take on the ongoing struggle against women abuse in SADC as a whole, since it's Women's Month in South Africa?
Well, I can only speak on women abuse in South Africa authoritatively.
Yes.
It would be very presumptuous of me to speak on the violence against women and other issues in SADC countries, because
Mhm.
it is not an agenda item,
Yes, ma'am.
women.
Okay.
And what we want in South Africa is to introduce it as a standing item on SADC,
Yes.
because it's an important issue. We have a ministry on women that will be dealing with most of these things, but SADC discusses broadly how we interact with each other.
Yes.
We would like to make sure that we create a segment of SADC that deals specifically with women. But right now, I can talk about South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
South Africa has acceded to most treaties and agreements that have been signed in the United Nations, requesting that government or requiring of government to offer certain protection to women.
Yes, ma'am.
And but violence against women is as rampant as you can have it. There is something wrong in our society that makes women so much more vulnerable year in and year out. Vulnerable against rape, vulnerable against any kind of abuse that you can think of. And we are struggling as government to find a way of how we can increase our understanding as a society about what we mean when we talk about equality, which is enshrined in the Constitution. Equality is fine when we talk about access, maybe to resources, BEE, very fine, everybody should support that. But in reality, the equality of the gender equality that we're talking about right now is not as enshrined in our subconscious and in our culture as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at some of our culture, you can see that actually patriarchy is so deeply embedded in how we define ourselves that it's going to take a long time, unless we take everybody on board and educate them about the rights, about equality, about the fact that unless women are equal, no society is ever going to move forward. And we've got to go to the rural areas and explain to them that when we have a culture such as Mabaya has, Mabaya, my spokesperson, in their culture, a man has a higher chair than a woman. A woman sits a little lower. Now, what is a symbolic message that you're sending there? That is the status of a woman. The woman comes and kneels to the man. That is part of their culture. They're very proud of that because they're a very humble people and they would like to show respect. But what is a symbolic value in reality? That women are a subordinate sector of society. We've got to find a way of communicating these things. It happens also in my culture, amongst the Xhosas, possibly in all African cultures. We've got to reach out to the people out there who still practice this culture that is deeply embedded in patriarchy and say to them, we can do it better. We can do it differently. We can have our culture, but at the same time recognize that women are equal. Recognize it took us a long time in South Africa to recognize the chiefdom of women. It had to be taken to the Constitutional Court before we recognized one chief who was a woman. Fortunately, she was in Parliament and she knew her rights, and it has opened the way for other women to assume chiefdomship. But it is not the normal. It is just by the way. So we have a long way to go to lay the foundation. Once that foundation is laid, we are hoping that we can then perhaps introduce it to other fora like SADC here. But we then go back to the violence against women. Women are open to violence precisely because the structure of society accords them a lower status than men. And therefore, if a man is angry, assault is one of the ways in which he expresses himself. And he has a right to do that. He has the power and therefore can dispense either patronage or can dispense anger in the way that suits him best. And women remain powerless. And they express their power also, power relations, by violence against women. You know, women have no right to say no because women have a lower status. Women haven't got the power to protect themselves, either physically in some cases or just in the structure in which society is engineered. The number of women that have been killed by men is just atrocious and should not be tolerated. In fact, we had suggested at the ANC conference that there should be a minimum sentence of those people who kill women. And we would like to make sure that it's not just mandatory 15 years, but maybe 20-year mandatory jail for anybody who kills a woman. It's unacceptable. We have rights and we've got to protect our children's rights. We've got to protect our own rights.
Thank you, ma'am.
My pleasure.